All right, so good morning, everybody. Welcome to the first of our summer PD series, which is hosted by the New England Association of Chemistry Teachers. This is a new project for us because normally in the summer we run an in-person conference, but that just wasn't feasible this year ultimately, and so we've decided to do this. And so we're kicking off this session with talking about CK-12 and getting started using CK-12 in your classroom. We've got people from all over. We've got people from Buffalo, New Hampshire, Illinois, Texas, Virginia, Georgia, Connecticut, Japan, Maine. So we've got people from all over, and I'm really glad that everyone is here and that you made it. I'm Kristen Vanderveen, and I'm the presenter today. And like I said, we're going to be talking about CK-12. I am monitoring the chat, but if there's a question, just stop me and ask it, and just unmute yourself. And we're going to just get started right now. So I want to talk a little bit about NEACT because that's the reason we're doing this. We were founded in 1898, so we're actually the oldest chemistry professional group in the country. We offer division meetings, chem chats throughout the year. So we're always talking about chemistry with other chemistry teachers from all over. Although we were founded in New England, we have members from all over the country. Most years, like I said, we do offer an annual summer conference. And so we hope that you'll enjoy this and that you will maybe continue to be involved with NEACT and come to future events. And I do encourage you to join NEACT at neact.org. It's a great organization. The price is very moderate. And we think we offer a lot to you. So let me talk a little bit about myself. So I'm Kristen Vanderveen. My email's in the presentation. I teach at the Bromfield School in Harvard, Mass, which despite the name is a public school. It's a 6 through 12 district, a 6 through 12 building, excuse me. It's a K through 12 district with only 2 buildings. And Bromfield is the 6 through 12 building. So it's really interesting because you watch the kids come in when they're really little, and then I have them when they're generally sophomores and juniors. It's a fairly small district with about 100 students in a graduating class. And we're also a one-to-one district. So our middle schoolers have iPads. Once they hit 8th grade, we switch them over to MacBooks. All the teachers have MacBooks as well. Our superintendent was very forward thinking about getting everyone a device and having them all be the same so that it helps minimize compatibility issues. And so I'm always thinking about how, if we have this available, how can we really make use of it in class with our students? And so that led me into CK-12, right? 2 years ago when the world was just, everything was changing and we were trying to figure out how to do this. You know, I had known about CK-12 for a long time. And I started to think about how I could explore that with my students and explain that. So CK-12, I'm assuming sort of if you're here that you may not have used much of it, or you may be an expert, I really don't know. But it's an online resource that is completely free. And a lot of their emphasis is really on math, science, and social studies. It's really just a good resource. And the biology teacher at the time and I started looking into what we could do and if this was a viable way for us to get information to our students when we were teaching in, hybrid mode, online, etc. And it does have a variety of interactive resources. And so this slide here, I'm really just highlighting some of the different things that you can get at CK-12. So we're going to start by talking about Flexbooks, and then we'll talk about some of the interactive formative activities that you can do with students where they're self-checking, which is a really helpful thing. There are also Plex and simulations, which are another useful feature from CK-12. And the slide here is just showing the Explore pull down menu. So you can see all the different features that are available there. So what I'd like everyone to do now is open up a separate browser window and go into CK-12. CK-12.org is the link, and either create an account or sign in. If you have a Gmail account, you can sign in with that. You can create a separate account with CK-12. I use it with my school account and not my personal Gmail account. You're going to do what makes sense for you. But that's what I'd like everyone to do right now, please. Because I think that would be a lot of fun. But we're actually going to go in. I've actually set up a class for CK-12 for today, and we're going to actually get people set up so that they can get going with this. Oh, I went too fast, as I often do. All right, so that's what I'd like everyone to take a minute and go to CK-12.org and go to join, right? And create an account. If you already have an account, if you could sign into your account, that would be great. And maybe you could let me know in the chat if you've been able to do that, just so I can get a sense of if we're ready to move on. So, I mean, CK-12 has been around for quite a while, so they've got a lot of resources there, and that's what we're going to start exploring. Looks like we're in pretty good shape. I'm getting notices that a lot of people are in, and so let's move on. We can always come back and get people set up if we need to. When you're in CK-12, you do have a library. If you find activities that you like, or if you create new resources or modify resources, why is this not loading properly? All right, you can find them very easily. The library is searchable. I also want to point out you can search the entire CK-12 library, so you can research things that just you have made. You can search things that are from CK-12, but you can also search for things from other community members in CK-12, and you can search by the type of activity as well as that source. I'm going to post the class code very soon, and it's on every slide where you're going to need that. So just give me a second and I will take care of that. That's coming. So I just wanted you to know, as you find things today or as you continue using CK-12, that'll be great. So we are going to talk actually now about classes in CK-12. I'm actually set up a CK-12 class for this session today. There's a direct link in there, but that's kind of annoying. If you're at CK-12 and if you're in your account, you can click classes. There is a plus sign and choose join assign if you're a teacher, and the code is N74HY. And I've actually got my iPad open so I can actually see as people join. I'm not the only person in the class now. So if you want to go ahead and join that class, that would be great. Was there a question?
What? Oh. Oh dear.
All right, so we're just trying to, get people in the class and make sure they can register, because I've put a lot of links in. Oh, I've got a bunch of people in now. As teachers, the students, it's all good, really. It was just a way to explore that. Now, if you use a different LMS, you can actually set that up. So my school is a Google Class school and a Google Classroom school. And so I can actually take my Google Classrooms and integrate them with CK-12, and that's really easy. There are other LMSs that do that as well, or you have the option of doing it through CK-12. So you're going to, and ultimately, if you end up using CK-12, you're going to do it, the way that makes sense to you. All right. And the reason I set the class up, I had this moment of inspiration yesterday is that I realized, oh, if I tell you what activities to explore, it's a whole lot easier than having you just try to randomly find them. And so I thought that would be a nice way to go. I don't care if you join as a student or as a teacher, it's all in there. I just want you to be able to see what's available. And I thought that was the easiest way to organize that. So I've actually posted 4 assignments, and I've shared my customized online textbook with you. They're actually in the reverse order of how we're going to use them, because I put them in the order they were in the slideshow, forgetting that CK-12 puts them in the reverse order, and that's fine. So these are the resources we're going to join or use today. But I've got a bunch of different things in here for you. So there are some assignments, and there is a shared resource, which is my textbook, just so that you can see what's available. So if you're in the classroom, you can see what's going on there. Again, it's at ck12.org, and the code is N74HY. And this is some of what we're going to be exploring today. All right. In terms of AD, they work very hard on standards and being accessible, Pamela, but I'm not 100% sure. It may be, so if you had a student who was visually impaired, I'm not sure how easily that would be to integrate that. Mostly, I don't know, because I haven't explored that, but that is a really good question, and I'll see what I can find while we're doing this. Okay, so I'm going to move on, unless I hear that we need more time here. And I'd like to start talking about the Flexbooks 2.0, which is really the heart of what CK-12 is about. It's a great resource, and we're going to start by talking about this. They're a customizable online textbook. You can use it as is, or you can create your whole Flexbook from scratch. If you feel like writing a textbook from the ground up that's customizable, you could actually do it here. I do actually recommend that if you use a CK-12 textbook as anything other than sort of a backup resource, and even then that you do customize it and you edit the text that you're giving to your students, because they will sometimes go off on tangents that are maybe beyond the scope of what you want to do, or they go in much more depth than students would need or would be ready for based on your sequence. So I do recommend that you customize your CK-12 book. Although you can just use it as a starting point, the more you customize it, the better it will suit your students' need. The code, sorry, I don't, give me 1 second. I will put it in the chat again. I have it on the slides where we need it, but I don't remember it right now. Hold on. All right, I'll put the code. Oh, somebody beat me to it. Great, thank you. So N74HY is the code. You can share the entire Flexbook with a direct link. You can do it through your LMS. You can download a PDF and give it to your students. And if you did download it as a PDF, there are other tools that you could use to make it accessible to students. I'm thinking like Kami and stuff like that. So there are ways to do that. You can also share the sections individually with students. So you have a lot of flexibility in how you get this to your students and how you use it with your students, which I find is to be really helpful. So if you're in CK-12, if you use the CK-12 Explore menu or the subject menu, you can go find a textbook. Obviously, I think we're all probably chemistry teachers, so that was the link that I put in there. But you'll notice they have middle school books, they have high school level books. They're starting to branch a little bit into college level textbooks, but at this point, that's not really their emphasis. They're really middle school and high school science for our purposes, but they do have a lot of different resources, which I find really helpful. So you can click on one of those and explore that a little bit. Just open that up. If you like it, you can add it to your library to customize later. You can even change the title of it. You'll see if you go back and look at my resources, what I shared, that's the one for my honors class at my school, but you can find other teachers' books too. So there's lots of resources there. And so just knowing that there's a lot available is really helpful, because you might find that there's something in maybe say the middle school version that you want to bring up for your students because the way it's presented just works for you, you can do that, which is really nice. In terms of customizing your CK-12, like I said, I do recommend customizing it. I found, for example, there was something with orbitals, and then all of a sudden it started talking about hybrid orbitals. I'm like, I don't want to introduce that yet. I want to put that later on. So you can customize each section. You can customize each chapter. You can put chapters in. You can take whole chapters out. You can take sections out. You can resequence them. It's really, really flexible that way, which is really a good thing. And that's something that you can play with. All right. You can also write your own section. If you don't like anything that you're finding in CK-12, but you want to use the platform, you could write your own section or your own chapter, your own book, really, if you wanted to. Or if you, like I said, if you found something in a different Flexbook that you wanted to bring over, you can bring that all in. So you really, really can customize it, which is really nice. To do that, you have your Flexbook 2.0. There's an older version of Flexbook, so you don't want to use that. You really want to use the 2.0. Oh, there's a question about, is this the only textbook your school uses? It is not at my school. I do have the introductory Zumdahl high school textbook that I use with my honor students, and our non-honor students use a different Zumdahl textbook. I use it more as a backup resource, but there are schools that have gone all to CK-12, and you're certainly lots of schools can do that, and you can do it very successfully, but I would definitely still recommend customizing it if you're going to do that. You just choose customize from the choose menu. You can assign it, you can share to your class, you can do all kinds of things. You can add chapters, remove units or subtopics. You can add modalities. So we talked about some of the different things they offer in terms of quizzes and adaptive practice in the Plex. And we're going to go through each of these different kinds of modalities separately. But you can actually add them into the subtopics for each chapter as you see fit. So if you're like, oh, this is a great activity and I want to put it in, you can do that. So you can connect it right to the chapter. Other things I wanted to say about the Flexbooks, because you can spend a lot of time doing this. You can drag the sections into a different order. So here's the generic CK-12 unit 1, right? And you're like, no, I want agriculture to be before medicine. I want the environment to be after energy and medicine. You can just drag those around and put them in the order that you want, or take them out altogether. You could rename the section. So if you don't like that heading and you want to call it something else, you are free to do that. And you can add sections. They call them reads in CK-12 terms. And so you can write your own here. You can also edit the lesson text and all the images for each one of these sections. All right, and remove whatever you want to. So if you like something but want to take other things out, or you know that you just don't care about research here, fine, then take it out. And that's a really useful thing because it will all be numbered appropriately in the order that you want. And you can also move things into other textbooks. So if you found something in a different book, or you found something in my book that you wanted to bring over, you can do that. And you can actually have a lot of flexibility, which is a really great feature. So you can really make it work for your students where they are in terms of what you put in there. So go find a Flexbook. So you don't have to do this in the class. Just go into CK-12, and if you go under Explore, you can go into Flexbooks 2.0, and it'll bring up pages for that. You can get started. You may already have one, but you can browse them. The science books, they have social studies books too. There are some that are already translated, which is another neat feature. But if you wanted to start with, say, the Chemistry 2.0 Flexbook and just start playing with some adaptations, make some edits, go pick a random chapter, move some things around just to play with the experience. So that's definitely worth exploring. All right, so you're going to customize and make some edits. And then in the chat, what edits did you decide to make? We'll spend a couple of minutes on this. You can spend a lot of time editing the Flexbook 2.0. So you're not going to do it all today. You're just going to start seeing that it can be done. You can insert videos from YouTube into the text. Yep. You can put in images because it's all widely available. You do want to make sure you don't upload anything that where there are copyright issues, like images from publishers or things where it's got to be open access in terms of that. So you just want to make sure that anything you put into the book, into your CK-12 book, that you are allowed to do that and you're not stepping on someone else's copyright. How do you link this to a class? That's a good question. So once you have your book set or a section set, you can, if you go under the choose button, there's an assign. So you could assign a section to a class, or you could share it to the class. So assign means like there's a due date and there are questions that they're going to have to answer. Share to class is just, here's the resource, the whole thing. So if you have to have classes set up, either you've imported your maybe Google classes or Schoology or your LMS classes, or you've made classes in CK-12 like I did for you. And so it's either assign or share. All right. And you're not going to get this done today. You could spend, like I tended to do it before I assigned things to a class. I would go through those sections and make sure that they were working and that they were written the way I wanted them to be. All right. So the other thing I want to mention about, right, you can share this with your classes. You can assign individual lessons because there's literally a link of you can add other learning resources in. So there are videos that YouTube that I'm sorry, there's somebody who's got some background noise going on. I'm just going to make sure if you have a question, please unmute yourself and ask.
Pulled it out. I'm sorry. So hot yesterday. I didn't get out to.
Just because it can be a little distracting. So if I just muted you, it's because I was having a hard time keeping track of everything. So you can add those other resources in, and then you can actually also customize the practice. So each lesson comes with a practice set. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit more detail because it's one of the CK-12 features is this adaptive practice. So you can actually customize those practice, which are formative assessments that can be built in. And you can add in other videos, or you can add in the Plex, or you can add in all different kinds of things to make the lesson more engaging for students. Sometimes they like to have other things to be able to do. Instead of just reading, you can give them some other options. And this is something that is very important to CK-12. All right. If you do assign a section of the textbook as a reading assignment, you can actually get a lot of insight from that. You can look at how much time students spent on that lesson. If they did the practice activity, you get a heat map to tell you their skill level. Were they very engaged in it? So it gives you some recommendations. And so this can be a very helpful thing as well. One thing also about all the lessons, they always start with like a picture and some sort of real world connection, which is kind of a neat feature for all of the books. So the sections tend to be quite short, and that's okay. Some other useful features, on the student end, students can translate the Flexbooks into other languages. So there's a choice menu all the way down at the bottom of that lesson where they can translate that into a different language if they'd rather read it in a different language. I think it really uses Google Translate to do that, but that's an option for this on the student end. And also, if they are doing a reading assignment from a Flexbook, they can highlight text and actually type notes to themselves in that application, which is also something that students can take advantage of. So I wanted to mention that about the Flexbooks, which are really a great way to get started. So what I want to do now is segue into talking about the adaptive practice and the quizzes. Each section actually automatically has one of these built in. You can edit it. And so that's what I want to talk about right now is the adaptive practice. First of all, what it is. All right. So the goal of an adaptive practice is it's got a pool of questions chosen by CK-12 that the students have to answer the questions until they get 10 of them correct. All right. If they answer some easy questions very quickly, it'll give them some medium difficulty questions. If they're answering medium difficulty questions, it'll give them some harder questions. If they start missing harder questions, it might go back. And so it is meant to be adaptive and give you a sense of how they're doing. They can be assigned as a standalone assignment. So you can just give the adaptive practice. You can connect it into a Flexbook. So if you want to make it part of a reading assignment and then they have to do this follow-up, you can make that all happen. You can opt when you give the assignment as a standalone if the students will be shown the answers or not. So that's up to you. All right, so I want everyone to try it. If you go into the CK-12 class, I have an adaptive practice assignment in there on chemical symbols and formulas. And if you go into the class assignments, you can go in and do it. We'll only spend a couple of minutes on it. It's chemical symbols and formulas. I know all my chemistry teacher friends can do this with their, hands held behind their backs. If you're not already in the class, the code is ck12.org and the code is N74HY, as we had said before. But just go ahead and try it. See how get a sense for it. You do have to make sure when you do it, if you complete it, that you actually mark it as done. But it's really useful. And we'll talk about the information you get on the teacher side. I thought it would be useful for everyone to see what the students see. Right. And you can actually search in CK-12 for just adaptive practice by subject area. I just thought for this one, it made sense to just have everyone doing it. But you do have to you have to turn it in. And I can actually see, have you started it? Have you turned it in? I can turn it in for you if you haven't started it. If you've started it but not turned it in, it's possible to do that on the teacher end. But just stop playing with it for a couple of minutes would be kind of fun. So it's what gets reported is, did you actually finish the assignment? And if you finish the assignment on the student end, they get full credit. I find these can be great do nows. You could use them as exit tickets. A lot of them are quite short. I chose this one especially because it was short and sweet. I didn't figure one that was estimated to take 10 minutes would be our best choice. But I thought it would be really handy. So I'm just checking in to see where we are. But a lot of people are doing it, which is great. And don't forget to turn it in if you haven't turned it in. All right, that's a CK-12 quirk. That you need to turn it in. If you could maybe comment in the chat, it looks on my end, I'm actually in the teacher report section so I can see. So if you're having trouble doing this, we can do that. Otherwise, we can just move on and start talking about the report side of things. The interesting thing about CK-12 is you can set it up. You have to actually give a due date, but the students can usually access it after that. All right, so in terms of the reports, this is actually a screenshot from my classes last May. I took out all the student information, of course. The score report is, these are all practices that we had done in class, and it's based on completion. If they completed it, then you get this heat map, which gives you a level. And it's reported back as 100% if they answered 10 questions correctly. It doesn't matter how many questions they tried, did they get to 10 correct? And you can choose when you assign it if they can read, that they can retry it. You can, okay, we'll talk about editing the assignments in a moment, okay? As you can edit adaptive practice, but as soon as you edit it, it's no longer adaptive practice. It will be a quiz. So we'll talk about that in a second. And you do get this heat map, so you can get a sense very quickly. Are your students working at a high level, or do you have a lot who are working at the exploring and developing level? Did they not turn it in yet? And then you can go click on those white squares with the dash. That student didn't turn it in. So if you click on that, you can see if the student attempted the assignment. And if they just forgot to turn it in, you can take care of that. You can then, for that individual student report, you can look at how many questions did the student answer. This student got 10 out of 10 correct. They answered 5 in a row correctly. They spent 5 minutes on the assignment. You can reset the score if for some reason you wanted them to do it again. And then you can actually look at what questions the student got. How many of them were easy, how many of them were medium, how many of them were hard out of the questions that they were offered. And I obviously didn't put the student the student name in here, but this is actual student data from my class. And you can get a lot of information for that. When did they do it? Were they answering easy questions or hard questions? And so you can do that. You can switch adaptive practice, what adaptive practice is associated with a given reading lesson in your Flexbook. You can adapt and modify the adaptive practice, but then it won't be an adaptive practice anymore. It will then be a quiz. All right. So a quiz, all right, is completely customizable. You can write your own from scratch. You can take a quiz that already exists and modify the questions. You can just sort of say, okay, I'm going to read through all the questions in this that fit under this topic heading, because that's how they have you select them. Or you can just say, give me 10 random ones, although I don't really recommend doing that because some of the questions will not be good matches for what you want that unit to be. You can also write your own questions in the editing, so that's an option as well. All right. But like I said, if you customize an adaptive practice, it becomes a quiz. And I learned this the hard way. I took an adaptive practice that had 25 questions in it. And I pulled, I don't like these questions. I'll pull these 4 out. But it was still like a 21 question quiz. And I thought it was still adaptive, but it wasn't. The students why is this taking so long? Because they had 20 questions to do. There's a question in the chat. Do the adaptive questions cover only the assigned sections? The adaptive practice, sometimes I find that the questions in those sets aren't great matches, or based on the skill set I expect my students to have at that time, they're not great matches. So I would say in my experience for the chemistry ones, they're not always great matches, or some of them are just much more involved than I want, or much a mathier take on it maybe than the students are ready for. Like they'll suddenly throw in a really hard question. Since it's adaptive practice and it's do enough until you get 10 correct, that's less of an issue. But I do find that these make great do nows for, a couple of days into the topic, you know, and thinking about that. So with the, Laura, I don't use Socrative, so I'm not as familiar with that. So the quizzes are, here are the questions that I have chosen for you. All right. And if we're going to do a little quiz right now, so maybe we'll be able to answer this after you do this. If you go into the class, I have a quiz on sig, figs, and measurements. I thought that would be a quick one to do. So if you want to go and just play with that and just try it. All right. I literally set this up yesterday. I have this quiz restricted to a maximum of 4 attempts, but you can take as much time on each attempt as you want. And there are only 10 questions. It should go pretty quickly. And even if we don't finish it, that's okay. Just playing with it is worthwhile. So then you can see what the students are experiencing. So this is a great question about the quiz. The 10, however many questions you have chosen, all the students will see those same questions. You can choose whether the questions are given in the same order or randomized, but all students will get the same questions at the same time. When I want truly randomized questions from a data bank, I actually use quizzes for that. So those are good questions. Just trying to get a sense here of where people are. Don't forget to turn it in, right? Because it won't show up on that end if it isn't marked as turned in. I can always turn it in for you, and you may have your score, but it doesn't come through to me fully until somebody turns it in. All right, but it looks like, again, I chose this quiz because I thought it would be pretty quick for people to do. So I'm going to go on to the next slide in terms of the quizzes. So if you are writing a quiz in CK-12, you have a lot of options. You can select the questions. So it has you, they do that by choosing a question set. So you can choose your topic. All right, so if it was a chemical properties practice, that was a topic that was pre-selected based on what I had been looking at before. But if you click on the little blue plus sign, you can add a question set and search for other topics that you wanted to do. If you thought there was another question set somewhere that would suit your needs. And so you can select those questions, and you can select that to be, there are 22 questions in the set, just give me 10 of them where you don't actually choose them. Or you can go into the individual the question set and toggle that. Yeah, I want that question and that question and that question. Oh, not that one, you know. And you can actually write new questions in here as well. You can select the number of student attempts. You can say, okay, they get 1 attempt only. They can get 4 attempts. They can get unlimited attempts, really anything you want there. You can decide whether or not there's a time limit or if it's untimed, depending again on the needs of your students and what makes sense or what's the purpose of this. You can decide whether or not to provide hints. So CK-12 has things that will pop up. You seem to be having trouble. Would you like some additional resources? And you can choose to turn that on or off. You can turn on or off whether it shows solutions for the problems. You can turn on and off the order, whether the questions are shuffled or if all the questions are in the same order. And you can also choose for that particular quiz, do they have to do it in a single session, or can they pause the quiz and come back to it later? And so you have a lot of flexibility here with the quiz. All right. You know, I tend to use the quizzes not as quizzes, but more as, you know, check-ins with the students or as homework. So I often will let them redo it and come back to it, but it's really about what your purpose is here. And you can have a lot of fun with that. I do not think you can share pooled results. You can't share anything to the students in that way. They know their individual score. but there's not like a class comparison data that you would give to the students. So let's play with this a little bit. Go into CK-12, not in the classroom, but just in CK-12 in general. And you can go and search for quizzes. I've got just a picture here of an Avogadro's Law quiz, but you could pick anything you want to. And just, you can search by subject, you can search, you can go, the easiest way might be searching, just searching in the search bar up in the top right-hand window for chemistry quizzes. You'll get a whole bunch of them. And just check out those customization options. It's not that you have to commit to like actually giving this quiz. You're using it just to explore. But there's a lot to play with here. And just checking out those customization options. And then in the chat, what did you do to customize your quiz? Or what would you like to do? And again, you can really go down the rabbit hole with these, and you can spend a lot of time, especially if you want to start writing some of your own questions in CK-12. Some if questions have been sort of approved by CK-12, it's sometimes questions from other teachers. Otherwise, for the created questions, you're really just seeing what you made, unless they've been sort of, they have an approval process. You do want to make sure, of course, that you're not putting copyrighted questions in here, because that's not a great feature. Quizzes are showing up as grayed out. Are you searching all of CK-12? Or are you searching just your library? Oh. So let's see, it's the best way to find quizzes. Quizzes in all of CK-12, or if you have a Flexbook open and you search on quizzes in this Flexbook, you might find one there. Trust me, they are really in there. I have a lot of them in my library. How do I do that? So I would say if you go to my library, and if you've put a book in your library, you can then filter by type. That's probably the easiest way. Sorry about that. But if you filter by quiz, there's a lot of, they are there. So Liz, you said you found filtering by quiz brings up a huge menu of quizzes once you click on it. So I think if you're in your library, that's probably the best, one of the easiest ways to go. All right, well then that was. Okay, it looks like I made a lot of my own quizzes. So you can go to create new and quiz. If you're in your library and you go to create new, you may have to be in as a teacher. That, all right. All right, if you're in your library and you select create new, the quiz. Sorry, I should have played with that more. before I did this. And we can play with that more, but there are some other features of CK-12 that I'd like to talk to you about too. The practices are linked to the end of each chapter. The section of each chapter of each section has a practice. The quizzes, a lot of them you're going to end up making. And so we can play with that. In terms of the quizzes, in terms of the information you get when you do assign a quiz, they are given as a percent score. So percent correct for the number of questions you gave them. You can get information on the number of attempts and how much time the student spent on them. And then you can also download reports from the entire class as a CSV file if you need to import them into something else. So you can get a lot of information. You can see if the student didn't do it or if it was submitted on time or late or whatever. So we're playing with quizzes is going to be a lot of fun. If they did more than one attempt on the quiz, if that's allowed, you can actually see that for the individual student as well. Okay, on the first time I got, 75%, but my second time I got a 100. Of course, they are the same questions, so, that does help. So you can see how they're doing. You can also embed these right into the lessons as inline questions. So if you've got an adaptive practice that you like, or you've got a quiz that you like, there's actually a way to embed it into it. So you have it, and there's an embed option in the quiz when you go to assign, instead of assigning the quiz, and you copy that code, and you can go back to the lesson or the read section and paste that in, and then it will give the students unlimited attempts with feedback there, but you don't get any score information. There are two other features of CK-12 that are worth mentioning. One are activities called Plex, which is, again, it's a CK-12 thing. It comes from play, learn, explore, interact. I've got some, I find these make great do-nows. Again, not so much for instruction, like the original instruction, but maybe following up a day or two later, although people use them in a variety of different ways. There are a lot of different Plex for chemistry. I have a link to a chemistry Plex, and if you go to the Explore menu, you can find them. They are scored for completion, so they do show up in the report side of things for you. And the last question is open-ended, so there's whether the student answers it or not, but you could use it to generate discussion. And I've just got a few here, but we're going to do this, explore this Plex for a couple of minutes. It's in the classroom, matching molecules. I think you'll all find it very easy to do, but you can actually drag things. It's interactive, and then it has some follow-up questions. So they're kind of fun. They usually don't take very long. Oops. So if you want to just play with that. Back in the classroom. And the interesting, because I've got the classroom open as a teacher on my iPad, and I can see, if you've started it or not, or if you're done. Doesn't really tell you sort of in progress, which that would actually be a nice feature. But it tells me when you're done. Now, the Plex are not something you can customize. They are what they are. And you can give feedback on them, but you can't change them or edit them in any way. All right, but they're kind of fun to play with, I find. And some of them I like better than others, but of course that's true with any resources. So I do recommend, play with it, explore it first before you give it to the students, and make sure it's not, if it's too far into the unit beyond where your students are, maybe you need to hold off on when you assign it. And that's just something to consider. There's a whole index of chemistry Plex. So if you go into the main menu, you can just look at Plex. If you go to the explore menu, and you can see all of them there. You can type into the discussion question. Sometimes, that's weird. All right. Sometimes they can be verbal discusses, but just, some of the Plex are really, really good, and you'll have to play with them to know which ones you like. They're very interactive and they can be a lot of fun. Again, they're very short. You'd still, I think you need to turn it in. Yeah. Right now, most people are showing up as not having started the assignment, which might be just because you're interested in doing other things, or it might not show up to me until you're all done, but that's okay. They're just worth exploring. So Laura, you said that it won't let you turn it in. I can turn it in for you. I just turned it in for you. All right, but it's, that's really weird. Maybe if you're in as a teacher, it won't let you turn it in. That's fine. I'm not giving you a grade on it. And a lot of times I would do this as a do now, or to start discussion, or just to explore things. That was, and again, it's just done or not. The other feature that they have are simulations, all right? And again, there's a whole bunch of chemistry simulations. They have a quite nice one on Rutherford's gold foil experiments. And the smells, actually, this is one of my students' favorite, if you're into Graham's law. And a nice one on Le Chatelier's principle that I did at the end of my equilibrium unit that I thought was extremely well done. There's a whole list of these as well. And so if you go back into the classroom, there is a simulation for the speedy smells. And if you want to play with that a little bit, that's great. And if you don't want to play with it right now, that's also okay. I just wanted you to get a feel for the different kinds of things available, because we're going to wrap up soon. It's 5 of 10. And there's a lot to do in here. All right, so if you want to play with that sim, that's great. I found that these were a lot of them were a little bit more involved. They varied. Again, always check them out before you use them. All right, there's a question about customizing a textbook and share it with your classes. I believe you have to publish it again in CK-12. But we can do that. And yeah, I can share a copy of the presentation with participants. I'll grab a copy of the link when I stop sharing and bring that out to everybody. I'm not sure that the edits go live once it's sort of been published. The published version, if you shared that with classes, might not show up unless you've republished. All right, but there are a lot of other simulations if you want to explore. There are a lot of physics simulations. I mostly look at the chemistry simulations, but of course, what did I bring up? The picture of all the physics simulations, but you can just browse them to find one that interests you. Like I said, there are a bunch of them and they're quite good. All right, just in terms of assignments in general, you can assign sections to read and answer questions with, and then you can get, this is all the information you can get for your students, Again, you can share it or assign it. You can play with the related content. Students can do notes and highlights. You could have tagged in resources for that. So there's a lot of information you can give with that. In terms of those assignments, you have to choose a due date. It won't let you give it without a due date. You can assign them for in-class or asynchronous work or as homework. There's lots of different ways to do that. They directly integrate with Google Classroom, Canvas, and Schoology if you use those LMS forms. Otherwise, you probably would set it up as classes within CK-12. And so we're a Google Classroom school, as I mentioned, so I do it all through there. I think this, I think the simulations are fine on iPads. I've not had any issues with them. We try to make it pretty friendly to lots of different platforms. I'm opening it up on my iPad right now and I'm not having any trouble. So I can't speak for Chromebooks only because I don't have a lot of experience with Chromebooks, but as far as I know, they do work. I just can't confirm that. You can schedule assignments too, but I will tell you the default is that it will show up at midnight unless you go into your LMS and change that time. And you can assign any modality. Adaptive practice quizzes, Plex, or simulations by themselves, or they could be part of a Flexbook lesson, however you choose to use that. They try to make it, very accessible to students. That's really the goal of CK-12, is that everybody can use them. All they need is internet access. So they work pretty well. On the student end, there are some review features that they can use where they can see summaries of lessons and key vocabulary and some example questions for that, which is really helpful on the student end. When it's linked with Google Classroom, the grades from CK-12 do show up there. So right away, if it's all linked together, which makes it easy. This is a flyer from CK-12 just showing all their different things. And I do want to mention that they do have a certified educator program, which is online and fully on demand for PD, and it is free. It takes about 10 hours to complete the program, but it does really teach you the ins and outs of editing Flexbooks and making quizzes and doing adaptive practice and all the features of CK-12. And you can, if you didn't get what you needed, you can try it again and check things out. It's really very user friendly. So then of course you get a nifty badge, which of course everyone wants a nifty badge for their email signature, but it is, if you think you're going to use CK-12 in the future, it is worth getting. And just to wrap up, thinking about how you might use CK-12 in the future, if you're using that. We're officially done, but I'm going to leave. I'll stay in the Zoom meeting for a while if anyone has questions. We do have PDP CEU request forms. We will send them to all the participants at the end of our summer series. So we'll be sending that out later in the summer, probably mid to late August, whenever our last one is. I'm just making sure I've got a list of everyone who is here, so I make sure that I will send it out to you, because that's my job. I've got that form ready to go, but our PDP coordinator has asked that we wait until the series is done to do that. I'm just so glad everyone was able to come, and I hope you found it useful. And please consider coming to more NEACT events in the future. Okay. All right. So if anyone has any questions, I'll be here for a bit. stop sharing. I'm also going to stop recording at this point.